Take your hands off of me. Take your hands off of me now.
Imagine my shock on hearing that an auditor, a citizen journalist, had been assaulted at a prison by one of the prison officers. I just had to watch and share in the natural and understandable outrage. I bet there's a cover-up too. It probably goes right to the top.
Mad. I'm now at Aylesbury, HMP Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire.
This is MA Audits. It's a small channel and he's been auditing for about a year, and it looks like he still hasn't sorted his camera out, but never mind that. I want to see the assault.
I had a tip off that this was a young offenders institution before, now it's an adult jail. This is where we are.
He's at HMP Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire. It's a Category C prison for adult men, which is the lowest security category for a closed prison. The next category down is open prison, so most of the men inside HMP Aylesbury will be low-risk offenders. Just so that you have a sense of place, the prison is on a public highway, and where he stood at the moment is just here, which means he's still on the public highway and he's perfectly entitled to be stood where he is. Accompanying him on this visit is an auditor called Herts Audits. Herts stands for Hertfordshire, I assume. The problem is I can't show you his channel as well because very recently, possibly even as I was making this video, he removed all his videos and rebranded his channel. Here it is. I have no idea why he's done that, but given the way these two go about their auditing, I strongly suspect it will be because the police have him on bail or something like that and he's been advised to remove his auditing content for the time being. Don't be surprised though if his content reappears and he changes his channel back to auditing again in the near future. Possibly that may have happened already by the time you see this. The main concern about auditors and prisons is that Section 40D of the Prison Act 1952 makes it an offence to take a photograph or other recording inside a prison. Note that subsection 2 states that where the vlogger or photographer is stood is immaterial to the offence. Note also that subsection 1 has two limbs to it, two different offences. In subsection 1A, the offence is to take a recording inside a prison, whereas in subsection 1B, the offence is to transmit a recording from inside a prison to the outside of a prison. Unfortunately, the subsection 1 offence does not explicitly address a situation where someone records the inside of a prison as opposed to recording inside a prison, if you see the distinction. The reason I consider this unfortunate is that it inevitably leads to uncertainty when you read subsection 1 in conjunction with subsection 2, because you have to ask yourself, if it doesn't matter where the recording device is, then does that mean we must read the offence in subsection 1A as criminalising any recording of the inside of a prison? I really doubt it was the intention behind the legislation to criminalise every such case, and a debate in the House of Commons on a proposed new prison media bill seemed to accept this, but that debate took place last year. The government minister at the time during that debate implied that Section 40D may not cover all situations in which the person doing the recording is stood outside of prison grounds. You only have to pause and consider a situation where a journalist or photographer or any curious person might film through the gate or from the air using a drone, and as long as that person is obeying and observing any civil restrictions on that activity, such as those that apply to drones, and as long as there is no ulterior nefarious purpose to the recording activity, I think it would be hard to justify looking at it as a crime, and certainly the Article 10 right to freedom of expression would come into play. This in turn raises the question, generally, of the relationship between Section 40D and Article 10. Can we treat Article 10 as integrated into Section 40D, so that a court would read Section 40D as if it contains Article 10? Or is Article 10 merely a potential justification available to a defendant who would otherwise have committed the offence? Whichever way we treat Article 10, we should remember that it is a two-handed provision in that any rights provided for by paragraph 1 of Article 10 are qualified by paragraph 2, which states that the exercise of these rights are subject to law and other formalities, conditions and restrictions necessary for maintaining a democratic society, and such things as public safety, the prevention of crime, national security and other things listed in that paragraph that you see there. We should also take into account Article 17 of the Human Rights Act, which states this: nothing in this convention may be interpreted as implying for any state, group or person any right to engage in any activity or perform any act aimed at the destruction of any of the rights and freedoms set forth herein, or at their limitation to a greater extent than is provided for in the convention. The prison can't use paragraph 2 of Article 10 to abuse the auditor's rights, in other words. Another point to consider is that the offence in subsection 1A of 40D is only committed if a recording takes place without authorisation. Section 40E defines what authorisation means, and in practical terms it would only be given by a prison officer if authorised by a governor for this purpose. The governor can also give the authorisation. I would take the use of the definite article in section 40E to imply it is a reference to the governing governor, not just any member of the management staff at a prison. Indeed, section 7 of the Prison Act refers to governor and deputy governor in the singular when providing that a prison must have a governor. But if, say, it's a large prison and there's a team of management called governors, as is common nowadays, and let's say a wing governor gave the authorisation, could it be argued that this lower level governor has implied authority from the governing governor to do so? It's not clear. We should bear all this in mind as we look at auditors in these situations. The key question here will be, if the auditor does record the inside of a prison, is that an offence contrary to subsection 1A of section 40D of the Prison Act 1952? And to what extent can an auditor be availed of the rights in paragraph 1 of Article 10 of the Human Rights Act?
This is the main gates of Aylesbury Prison. This is where the van comes in and out.
Just to repeat, because it does bear repeating, he is on the public highway. He is perfectly entitled to stand where he is at the moment. I don't see the inside of a prison at the moment. Where's he going? Let's go back to Google Street View. He's going here, which is a visitor centre, so he is now walking inside the prison itself, and he is still recording, and he doesn't have authorisation. In he walks, so he's not just filming the inside of a prison, he's filming within a prison. So there is no doubt that what he's doing falls within the ambit of the offence in section 40D. The remaining question is whether what he's doing should be treated as an offence.
Welcome to the here to help you. Please test street as we work expect and kind. So yeah, well, this is it. Hello.
Can we help you?
Just filming, mate.
We can't film in there, lad. I see your identification, please.
So the choir Aylesbury prison performance. So yeah, that's quite.
You've got an identification on you, so that I know who you are.
Under the Prison Act, it's a criminal offence.
We understand what you're doing, fella.
2 points to make. First, you will have seen that the men speaking to him are prison officers. Section 8 of the Prison Act states this: every prison officer while acting as such shall have all the powers, authority, protection and privileges of a constable. These powers are exercised pretty routinely against prisoners without most prison officers really thinking much about it as such. Another typical situation when prison officers will exercise the powers of a constable will be in dealing with visitors who are there to see a prisoner and are caught, let's say, trying to smuggle in something prohibited or misbehaving in some other way. If the prohibited item is illegal, the prison officers may detain the visitor until the police arrive, even though the visitor is not a prisoner. But prison officers would rarely, if ever, exercise these powers against members of the public who happen to be on prison property. If they have to remove a trespasser, which has happened in the case of 1 or 2 auditors, then that would not be the exercise of the powers of constable. That is merely just a prison officer acting as agent for the occupier, being His Majesty's Prison Service. The second point to make is in regard to the notice that you see there. It's displayed somewhere outside or in or near the entrance of every prison, and it clearly states that there shall be no photography within the prison, and that same notice was also at the entrance he filmed earlier, so there's no excuse. The precise semantics of how that should be interpreted, which I've touched on already, are not very relevant here because, as you can see, the auditor has walked into the prison. So he is clearly recording within the prison. There is no room for debate about that.
Hello, don't ignore me. You can only be in here unless you've got an invite. Okay.
It's irrelevant that the door was open. Of course the door is open because people need to get in. They can't walk through the door. It doesn't mean that you specifically have permission to enter. It is publicly accessible in the sense that people can walk in, but what the prison expects is that members of the public who walk in are those who are expected and have business with the prison, not people who just turn up and record everybody. Basically, the auditor is trespassing at this point.
Yeah, but it's not public access. It's not public access.
Well, clearly it's a visitor centre, mate.
Yeah, for families of prisoners.
And who are they?
You visiting someone?
Are they members of the public?
Are you visiting someone?
Are they members of the
No, but
public?
they have authority to
Doesn't
be in
matter.
here. You haven't got
There's
authority.
a door there.
I don't care.
I
You haven't got
do.
authority.
The prison officer is correcting what he says. What he now needs to do is tell the auditor that he must leave at once, or reasonable force may be used to remove him, and he may also be reported to the police for the offence of recording inside a prison without authorisation, contrary to Section 40D of the Prison Act 1952.
So I'm asking you to leave.
Put your hands on me.
Leave.
Do not put your hands
Just
on me.
leave.
The officer hasn't touched you yet. He can put his hands on you provided he is using reasonable force only for the purpose of removing you from the premises. If in the process of trying to stop you recording and encouraging you to leave, he happens to make physical contact with you, I don't see what the issue is. You're the one trespassing.
Don't put your hands
Just
on me.
leave.
Do not put your
I've
hands on
asked
me.
you. Just leave.
Don't put your hands on me.
You need to leave.
Don't put your hands on me.
I'm going to ask you one more time to leave, and then I might put my hands on you.
Yeah?
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 Okay, so you need to leave.
And then
The forced warning has now been given. As matters stand, you are committing an offence and you are also trespassing. The prison officer is well within his rights to put his hands on you and use reasonable force for the purpose of ejecting you from the premises.
that'll be assault.
But you're not meant to be in here.
I've got permission to be in here.
Okay.
You do not have permission to be there. You're lying. Removing you by force would not be an assault. The occupier has a long-standing common law right to physically eject you from the premises, in common with all other property owners and occupiers in England. That is the law of the land.
Goodbye. See the permission.
Me.
You haven't got permission. Right,
It's,
I'll
it's
see
a
you later.
public place.
Okay. There we go.
It is only a public place in the very limited sense that members of the public can enter uninvited on the condition that they have proper business with the prison. You don't. You're just there to cause trouble.
Take your hands off of me. Take your hands off of me now.
Well, it doesn't look like he's put his hands on you yet, but even if he has, he is allowed to, for the reasons I've just given. It's not an assault.
Do not put your hands on me again. And I mean that.
I haven't put my hands on
Yes,
you.
you did.
Leave.
I don't care. Step away from me. I
You need to
can
leave.
use reasonable force to move you away.
You can use all
Yeah,
the
I
force
can.
you want. Right, off you go.
Let me repeat the position. You have no proper business at the prison and you are committing an offence contrary to Section 40D of the Prison Act 1952 by filming within the prison without authorisation. Moreover, a prison is private premises. You are trespassing. You have been asked to leave repeatedly and you have refused. The prison officers are threatening to exercise the common law right of the occupier to physically eject you from the premises. The prison officers have not gone to that right straight away. They are exercising restraint and are trying to encourage and cajole you to leave of your own accord so that they do not have to lay their hands on you. So far as I can tell, they have not laid a finger on you, but they can if they want to, as long as it is only such reasonable force as is necessary to eject you from the premises. If the prison officers have to resort to force and you resist them, you will be committing an assault by beating, contrary to common law or contrary to Section 39 of the Criminal Justice Act 1988. I would further argue that by just now threatening to use force against these officers should they put their hands on you, you have already committed a common assault, again contrary to common law or Section 39. In short, the prison officers are doing nothing wrong, they are simply performing their duties. The wrongdoer here is you, MA Audits.
Do not put your hands on me again. And I mean that.
I haven't put my hands on
Yes,
you.
you did.
Leave.
I don't care. Step away from me. I
You need to
can
leave.
use reasonable force to move you away.
You can use all
Yeah,
the
I
force
can.
you want. Right, off you go.
I'm allowed to be in here.
No, you're not going
Yes, I am.
You haven't got-
It's a public place, mate.
That's Herts Audits you see there. It is not a public place for filming without authorisation. This is trespass, and in this case, since it's a prison, Filming is also an offence. Do you want to go for bingo and aggravated trespass too? All that's needed for aggravated trespass is intimidation, obstruction or disruption. I would say the courts will apply a pretty high bar for aggravated trespass, especially as so far you have only encountered prison officers and there appear to be no visitors or any evidence of your behaviour having a wider effect on the operation of a prison. But we're close, because this is surely disruption of a prison and obstruction of prison officers who are trying to conduct their duties. This obstruction is arguably a further offence under Section 89 of the Police Act 1996, the offence of obstructing a constable, given that a prison officer is deemed under Section 8 of the Prison Act 1952 to be a constable in the course of his duties.
Yes, it is. The door's open. The door's open.
The door is open because, as I mentioned before, people need to come in, and people expected to come in are visitors to the prison who have proper business at the prison. Maybe there should be a more secure entry system at the door, but I think there is a good reason for not having that, which is that people who are visiting are not prisoners and may feel a bit put out having to stand and wait in public in front of a prison. But even if you take the view that there should be secure entry, that again does not justify trespass. It is still trespassing. This is where the auditor is misinformed. He seems to think that an open door means that private property becomes almost like the public highway. He's just misinformed. He's relied on other auditors for his legal education, when what he should have done was either consult experts or read books or official guidance, which are the steps a real auditor would take.
Doesn't matter. If you don't want it, shut the door. Doesn't matter.
This is the second intellectual flaw that auditors have, which is that they don't listen. Most of them have poor listening skills. In order to learn stuff, you have to be able to listen, and auditors also lack humility. Learning requires humility because to learn you have to acknowledge that you don't know. This auditor says in his channel description that he's willing to learn, but he isn't. In common with all auditors, he thinks he already knows everything. Just pause and reflect on the situation. This is a prison officer trying to explain to the auditor that he is inside the prison. This is not an open public space, and filming inside the prison without authorization is prohibited by the criminal law, and is in any case not permitted by the prison because it's a sensitive area where you have visitors and maybe prisoners too, and it's not appropriate. The prison officer is patiently trying to explain all this to the auditor, and the auditor just will not listen. Another thing to reflect on is that, look, I don't necessarily like the police and prison officers and people like that, but even I recognise that they are people like you and me, and do these prison officers deserve this treatment? Do they deserve to have their faces up on YouTube? I've not blurred them out because at the end of the day they are acting in the course of their duties, and I don't see any reason for them to remonstrate with themselves. They seem to be handling the situation pretty well. But it should be clear that what the auditor is doing here is wrong, and also unfair on these prison officers.
Armed response.
Sorry?
Alarm response.
Yeah. So you need to leave. Last chance.
This guy here putting his hands on me.
No.
Yeah. It's on camera. It's on camera.
What is on camera here, the reality of the situation, that you yourself have recorded and broadcast for us all to see, is that you have trespassed inside a prison. You have recorded inside a prison, which, let me repeat, is a criminal offence because you've done so without authorisation, and when asked to desist and leave, you have repeatedly refused to do so, and you have told lies, falsely accusing a prison officer of assault, and when both prison officers have tried to reason with you and explain the situation, you refuse to listen, insisting that you know it all. You are not a civil liberties campaigner or a journalist or even a vlogger or photographer. You're just an idiot who is trying to cause trouble so that you have clickbait content for your channel. The purpose of my channel, Street Video Reviewer, is to show people the truth and the reality of what you're doing so that your content is no longer clickbait and is seen for what it is, just time-wasting garbage and harassment of innocent people just doing their jobs, for which you should be prosecuted in the criminal courts and thrown off this platform.
I don't need to. I'm going to leave, yeah. I'll leave. Yeah, no, it's cool. I'm going to leave. Yeah. Alright. Yeah, no, I'm going to leave. I'm just doing some filming.
You keep saying you're going to leave, but you don't. You're now filming the visitors' room, which looks like a children's play area amongst other things. Whatever you may think about prisoners, they have families and need to see their families, and they don't want some creep walking around with a camera. This is all just common sense.
Right, so there's kids in here, so we've got a duty to protect kids.
So this is the
Kids room.
This is the visitors area, guys.
Unless you're here to visit kids, is that your
Obviously,
thing, children?
Is he going to be filming kids now? I mean, it looks like there's nobody there at the moment, but there could be, and anything could happen. What's the idea? What is this achieving?
We all know who this guy is,
So he
mate.
didn't
Quite a famous guy, choir. This is their reception desk. Come in, book a visit.
Excuse me. Can you move out, please?
Hi, it's
I don't
me.
know who you are. I can't see you.
I'm me.
You haven't given me your
I don't need-
identification.
I don't need to
Me
identify
is not
myself.
an identification. I can
me,
ask you
I'm
for
me.
an identification.
No,
You're on a premises where this is present.
paid for by taxpayers,
This is
yeah?
yeah.
The fact that the premises is paid for by the taxpayer does not give you the same rights as the occupier. It's still private premises, and there are reasons for the various conditions, rules and restrictions that we all have to observe on private premises that are meant for members of the public. First and foremost, when a place is public, as you claim, then surely you can appreciate that when you're out in public there are rules. I can't walk into a library and start shouting at the top of my voice. If a librarian remonstrates with me about it, I can't say that it's a public place so I can do what I want. This is the other flaw in the auditor position, which is that even if we were to accept entirely the logic of an auditor, a public place is still subject to restrictions, conditions, laws and rules that regulate our behaviour in the broader interests of maintaining society. That being so, you can perhaps see why the prison officers are concerned about him recording. It's a criminal offence for one thing, but even if it weren't, they would still be telling him to stop and leave because it's just not the appropriate place to do it, for reasons that should be fairly obvious to anybody who is in touch with reality.
I know that, so do I.
So this is the visitor centre. This is where they all sit. This is the kids' bit here.
This way, sir.
I'm going
This way. This way.
Don't block me.
That way.
Don't
Don't
block
push.
me.
Don't push.
Don't
my-
block me.
Don't
Then.
push.
Don't
my
block
arm.
me then.
Then
He is refusing to leave. We are at the point when these prison officers need to consider the use of force.
then you don't get like that. Yeah.
Take your camera off. Oh, I am leaving. I'm leaving.
They smashed his phone. I have no sympathy. You stated repeatedly that you would leave and you didn't, and you eventually refused to leave. You're now being removed by force. I would say it's a bit late in the day to be telling us you're going to leave.
I'm leaving. Okay, I'll leave. I will leave. Let me go. I'll leave. Let me go. Don't touch me. Let's go then. Let's go then.
They need to get him away from the building, preferably escort him to the pavement.
Okay, they're blocking it. Yeah, they're blocking me in a minute. Just, I will go with you, please. All right, leave. Is there easily wait? Can you please wait?
The door was open.
Have they assaulted a member of
No,
staff?
no.
Okay.
I haven't told the members off.
I beg to differ. For one thing, you threatened a prison officer with imminent violence, which is common assault, and it also looks like you were resisting the lawful use of force, which is also an assault by beating committed by you on the prison officers.
Can I leave, please?
Please, go around the neck.
1 minute, please.
Can you let me go?
I'm trying to leave. Can you
Let me
move,
leave,
please?
please.
Excuse me, sir.
You're
I'm trying
hurting
to
my
leave.
head. You're hurting my head.
Well, if you wouldn't go around playing silly buggers, nobody would hurt your head, would they? Unfortunately, however, I do have criticism to make of the way the prison officers have executed this physical intervention. I will cover that in a moment. Let's just continue to watch the remainder of this part of the footage.
I'm trying to leave. Can you believe
I'm
me?
trying to leave.
Thank you. That's what I was asking.
Can you let me go?
Technically, scuff. The information we have at the moment is we're assaulting a member of
I haven't
staff,
assaulted anybody.
so we've called the police and the police will deal with these
I haven't
situations.
assaulted anybody.
You have, and in my view, you're a liar, and they are absolutely right to detain him until the police arrive. He should have the book thrown at him.
They've got him round the
He's got
neck.
his hands on me.
They've actually got him round the neck.
Oh, you don't need to get aggressive. I'm not being aggressive with you. Fucking hell.
Let go of that, mate. Let go of that. I'm your mate, Steve.
The broker's gimbal.
Barry, have you got it on video?
I've got everything. I've got everything.
Can you not break my thing, please? Yeah, you can I see where you got my thing?
They cuffed him.
Can you ask me, can you tell me?
I'm going to go back in.
Yeah, you can
Grab
assault
that.
it. Yes.
So they're not letting me in, and they've got in there. They've detained him.
Too right as well.
They've got him held up upside down. Well, over there. The officer actually assaulted him first, and then they both put hands on him and chucked him out. They held him around his throat, round his neck. I can't hear what's going on, unfortunately, because I'm outside and they've shut the door. And look, they're trying to cover up what they're doing by blinds.
What's actually happened is that he's been arrested for assault.
It was actually that large officer that assaulted him first.
He did not.
They're trying to put the blinds down to stop me from seeing. They've assaulted MA Audits. They're legally detaining him for what the gentleman did. They actually had him held around his throat and around his neck, so he actually couldn't breathe at one point.
Let's go back to that.
Then you don't get like that. Yeah.
Take the camera. Oh, I am leaving. I'm leaving.
Look what they're doing, look what they're doing.
This is the point on which potentially some criticism could fall on the prison officers, in that the physical restraint and escort technique they use there seems a bit chaotic and aggressive. The technique they should use is something like this.
So both of us have got now control on the arm. Here's the escort position that we spoke about previously. Making sure that the hand is just around the wrist area here and just above the elbow joint, so you've got some control, and between us we can move our person around fairly easily but also fairly safely. So we've got some control over the person. They're not too non-compliant at this moment in time. Within our package we talk about a yes, no or maybe person. This is either a yes person or a maybe person rather than a completely non-compliant. From this position, should the struggle start to get more difficult and we need to get more control, then we go into what we call a full arm wrap. So I slide through and take my arm right the way through here, and Lee's going to go into the same position. One of the most crucial parts of this is to have communication between the members of staff. Quite often in these stressful situations we get locked into our own way of thinking and our own doing. So we're moving, the other person's moving, but nobody's communicating. We've found through experience that even if this individual can hear us talking to each other, it's not a detriment, it's actually a positive, because they then realise that we've actually got control and we know what we're doing. So here we've got the full arm wrap. We can move the person forwards, sideways, backwards, wherever we want to go. If it gets even more difficult, because this is a vulnerable position still for both members of staff, obviously legs and kicking and these sort of things can occur as it's happening, and it's more difficult to control the arms sometimes, but we keep it nice and tight. What we can do is switch to a position at the back for the full arm wrap. This is done, both members of staff are going to change, but one at a time. So we communicate with each other. So I'm going to change first, and I'd communicate that to another member of staff. I'm going to move, you stay in your position. Okay, so I'm switching, and I get to here. At this point, when I feel secure, I will shout secure. Next person move. Therein, we're pushing forward, we're pushing forwards this way, as opposed to so that they can control the person. Care has got to be taken that we don't fall over, and especially when you're moving somebody backwards, you've always got to be mindful of what they're struggling to keep up with us. But that's an advantage again with the control. So here we are in the full arm wrap position to the back. where we can now move, and also we can take down to the floor, which we can do in follow-up tutorials, and also then we can switch back to a seated position. So that's the escort, the front full arm wrap and the back full arm wrap using 2 members of staff.
You'll see from the footage that what actually occurred was a world away from the type of professional physical restraint and escort technique just demonstrated. It looks like there's no clear method or technique involved here, and they've had him on the floor, and at one point they have him in a headlock, which I'm not sure was a good idea.
Okay. I haven't told the members off. Can I leave, please?
Please,
Can you let me go?
1 minute, please.
Can you let me go?
I'm trying to leave. Can you move, please?
I don't like what I'm seeing there. That being said, in defence of these prison officers, it's clear from this footage that MA Audits is resisting their use of force, which means that he has also committed a further assault by beating, and that probably goes a long way to explain why they've ended up restraining him in the way that you can see there. It's always going to be difficult when the person who has to be removed is physically resisting.
They actually had him held around his throat and around his neck, so he actually couldn't breathe at one point.
That's rubbish. There was no point at which he could not breathe.
I can't see anything. They blocked it. I got it. Don't worry, I got it. And I got how he assaulted you first.
Well, we've all seen the footage through the auditor's camera, and I saw no assault by the prison officer. If you're suggesting that simply touching you in those circumstances would be an assault, then you're in cloud cuckoo land. You were trespassing. Both of you.
Sorry, mate, can you move away from there?
No, I can't. I'm filming legally.
Well, you're not, because you are still on private premises and therefore trespassing. Well, I suppose whether it's actually illegal is a matter of debate, depends on whether you view it as aggravated trespass. I certainly do, but certainly what you're doing is unlawful in that it's trespass, as a minimum.
You're not filming legally, you're on our property at the moment.
I'm filming legally, and I'm getting video. I'm getting video evidence as well.
Once you're standing behind there, you're fine. But at the moment, you're on prison property, and you cannot be filming while on prison property. If you look at the sign next to you,
There's visitor centre. You can see it's visitor,
and it's still prison property.
Yeah, I have to
So
film,
you're going to have to
unfortunately.
go there.
I have to film,
one more time,
unfortunately.
so otherwise we're going to call the police.
The police are already on the way,
Fantastic. So I'm going to
and I will speak to the police when they come here.
I'm going to ask you to stand over there.
I will speak to the police when they come
Okay,
here.
fantastic. But for the meantime, I'm going to ask you to stand over
They're
there.
now starting to bully me, guys.
Nobody is bullying you. Quite the opposite, I would say that you're the bully in this situation. And I don't know how many times you've been asked to leave the property.
They're now starting to force me as well, because
Yes.
I've already forced
If
him.
you could please stand over
They've
there.
already assaulted MA, and they've already he's now getting threatened with assaults on me.
You're not being threatened with assault. You're somewhere where you have no proper business and you're being asked to leave. Simple as that.
Please stand over there, sir.
AY170 HM3 services. He's not actually recording, are you?
No, not at this point.
So therefore, he's not recording either. So it's my proof against his.
Okay, now I'm more than happy
Yeah,
to be
now can you go in
and
there,
I've
please?
also got pre-record for 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, I will be back on.
Over there, off our property, sir. Thank you.
I will be back on. So I'll wait for the police.
Eventually the police arrive. In fact, 2 lots of police arrive, and the police are in there for more than 3 hours while he waits outside for MA Audits, telling the police that he's supposedly captured on camera an assault on MA Audits by a police officer. This, of course, is rubbish and false, but allegations of that nature made by members of the public have to be taken seriously, so even though it is a false allegation, just the existence of the allegation will affect the prison officer's mindset and cause him worry and stress, and it may affect his career, even if it just goes on his file as an unproven allegation. It's all so wrong and unfair on men and women who are just doing their jobs, and whether they're prison officers, police officers, security guards, or ordinary workers in normal businesses, they have enough to put up with without this sort of nonsense, and it really ought to stop. Eventually, MA Audits is released and the police leave.
That officer there was threatening me, but then I told him to put his camera on. He put his camera on. He was nice and kind to me.
That's just rubbish. You all have just seen what happened. He's just completely lying through his teeth, assuming he has any teeth left. He's just a barefaced liar. I don't even like the police or prison officers or similar types of people, but I would be ashamed to stand there and lie like that just so that I can have clickbait content and get people wound up against authority. It's awful behaviour.
So it's MA Audits. Let's hear what he's got to say, because I'm on live as well.
Hello everyone, how are you doing? So I've got to go for a volunteer interview on Monday at 3 o'clock at LG Police Station. So yeah.
I've shown the police officers the footage.
What did they say?
Right, okay, thank you very much. So I've shown them all the footage.
Yeah.
I'm going to take you to the hospital, Nick, 'cause I know your neck's hurting you, because of the way they ripped you about.
But he did bring that on himself, didn't he? I mean, he was resisting the use of force when it was lawful for the prison officers to physically eject him. He was given ample opportunity to leave of his own accord, as were you.
Yeah, so guys, this is not going to be a video to miss, because the way they dealt with him, absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
The way that they dealt with him, as far as I can tell, was absolutely fair and within the law. I'm not saying it was perfect. The physical restraint and escort technique used was open to question, but even there we can defend the prison officers because he was clearly physically resisting. Besides which, perfect is the enemy of good. They were good enough for me. Hang on, let me get this on camera. Right. He's got cuff marks all there. Cuff marks all over his arms. Well, he will have cuff marks on him. He was handcuffed. What do you expect? He hasn't got bruises all over him, though. They didn't take him to the big man from Huddersfield to sort him out, did they?
No, mate. She won't talk to me. Got a colour number. She could not print my ticket out quick enough.
There you go. That's the big man. They didn't cart you off to Huddersfield for a beating from the big man. So you got roughed up a bit. Oh, there, baby. So what? You're not being oppressed? No purpose was served by your presence at that prison as a vlogger.
Yeah, I got them for video.
And here's the evidence we've got. In the process of obtaining his clickbait footage and dubious compensation fraud claim, MA Audits committed the following offences: recording within a prison without authorisation, common assault in the form of threatening a prison officer with imminent violence, assault by beating in that he physically resisted lawful force to eject him from the premises, aggravated trespass, obstruction of a constable. By uploading the footage of these prison officers following his visit and showing their faces, he has arguably also committed 2 further offences. First, we now have a course of conduct amounting to harassment, contrary to Section 2 of the Protection from Harassment Act, 1997. Second, under Section 127 of the Communications Act, a person commits an offence if he persistently makes use of a public electronic communications network to cause annoyance or needless anxiety to others, or if he sends a single message knowing it to be false with the intention of causing annoyance or anxiety. This is my response, by the way, to those people who come on my channel and claim that auditing is a legal activity. It is not a legal activity. Even if he was stood outside a business, much of this criminal law would still apply. I saw no evidence in the footage to support MA Audit's allegation that he was assaulted by prison officers. Conveniently, the relevant part of the footage from Herts Audits cannot be obtained because, as explained earlier, Herts Audits has mothballed his channel and removed all his content. There is something else to be said, specifically about MA Audits, but this applies to lots of auditors. Here is the description that MA Audits put beneath his video. I can't see any punctuation, full stops or commas in that. Then he also posted this on his own community page. He claims he went to hospital, which seems a bit over the top and makes him look like a bit of a fairy, frankly, but no doubt this is necessary for his compensation fraud with the help of HNK solicitors. He says the prison officers will get what is coming to them. What does that mean? And he promises that this experience has not put him off and he will be visiting more prisons in the future. On that note, it was also disappointing to see this. It seems that the police dropped all charges, whatever the charges were. Why? Why hasn't MA Audits been charged under Section 40D or with aggravated trespass? I will be contacting Thames Valley Police to ask why, especially given that this auditor seems not to have learned his lesson. But perhaps even more important than those points, important though they are, is that this post of his shows no grasp of the basics of punctuation. I've always believed that in the small things we can see big things, and what we are looking at here is somebody who, at least it appears to be somebody, who is semi-literate. Whatever subject matter is being audited, auditing requires literacy. You, MA Audits, are purporting to assess the performance of trained people against written standards and the law. As I've mentioned in the past, the law is a library subject. It requires the ability to read and comprehend at a very high level. Somebody whose literacy is, at best, semi-functional does not have the capability to audit anybody or anything. The whole design of his channel gives off the impression of a trivial, unserious person, right down to the channel intro music that I suppose is meant to add to this groovy, fun feel. This level of poor literacy that we see from MA Audits is just that of somebody who has spent his entire life sat in front of a TV or computer screen, watching mindless rubbish, maybe listening to trivial pop music or whatever, a person who is too stupid or lazy to make any intellectual effort. There's no excuse for it, especially in somebody who purports to go around auditing other people and threatening jobs, reputations and livelihoods. It's hypocrisy for this man, who doesn't appear to even have a solid grasp of his own native language and is ignorant of a relevant law and willing to break the law to go around auditing other people. What this man needs to do before he starts auditing other people is audit himself. He needs to fix his English for a start, so that it's at least at a standard that he can read and understand public advice and guidance on the law. He needs to make sure he understands the law and whatever other standards apply before he runs around auditing other people. He needs to fix his attitude, and finally, he needs to start thinking for himself. Auditing isn't rebellion or dissent, it is herd behaviour, and it's stupid. Auditing also spreads ignorance and irrationality, like a contagion. Taking a look at some of the comments beneath the Auditor's community post, we find these. There's a lengthy post from a supporter of MA Audits, which you see on the screen, urging him to bring a private prosecution against the prison officers, which in my view is totally deluded. Regarding the physical restraint techniques, the commenter says, "That was a joint assault, and then held," I think he means held, "in a headlock, which is false imprisonment, and could be seen as torture under the Human Rights Act. As if it's a pain compliance position, he had no authority to conduct such a headlock, and then decided to twist up his arms, which could have broken them, more pain compliance without the right authority." It was not assault or false imprisonment. It is true that the physical restraint and escort technique used to remove him is open to question based on what we can see in the footage, but here are some facts to consider. He was trespassing. He refused to leave. He was recording within a prison, which is an offence, if done without authorisation. The prison officers were entitled to use reasonable force to remove him. He resisted. I'm finding it really hard to view any of this as torture. Just to be clear, pain compliance techniques are not illegal. They are within the law as long as such a technique is used for control and restraint purposes only, not as punishment. In this case, I'm not convinced any pain compliant technique was used anyway, but even if it was, MA Audits was resisting, and the purpose of the headlock is control and restraint. I'm sure there are lawyers who will give the torture argument a go, but usually desperate arguments like that are a sign that you have no argument. The nonsense continues, I'm afraid, because this person then sat and typed all of this. "And they justify this with a false accusation. He assaulted a member of staff, which is fictitious given you've recorded it, so willful intent to pervert the course of justice, and then broke his property, criminal damage. This could also be seen as further perverting the course of justice, to destroy evidence that could be an indictment in its own right. They then handcuffed him, which they have no authority to do so, and then forced him back inside the property against his will and consent, further acts of false imprisonment. This does damage their case because that only potential defence was they were preventing him from entering the property and wished for him to be not on private property. However, by deciding to forcibly take him back inside contradicts their previous requests. They then continue to hold him in a pain compliance position, which is further torture. Not trying to patronise, but gold star for going to the window and recording. You've collected invaluable evidence. And they also removed his face covering if he was wearing that for medical reasons that could have claimed for disability discrimination, as they have no authority to remove equipment used to protect you and vulnerable adults. He then attempts close the blinds, which is more evidence of conspiracy. Additionally, this whole incident happened with nobody cam, on which evidence is more criminality. Find them a decent solicitor and they will rip them to smithereens. As well as having poor punctuation and poor English all round, the person who wrote that just does not understand anything. He's inverting the truth. In the hands of this person, the use of reasonable force to remove a trespasser becomes assault, criminal damage and torture. A lawful detention by prison officers who have the powers of a constable becomes false imprisonment. Removing the face covering of a masked offender who is under arrest is disability discrimination, even if the mask was worn for no other reason but to hide the offender's face. The use of handcuffs is not allowed, according to this person, even though MA Audits was resisting lawful force and the prison officers, as I say, have the powers of a constable. Closing window blinds is evidence of a conspiracy. Doing your job becomes perverting the course of justice. And he's not done yet. He also wants MA Audits to contact the Attorney General, his local MP, the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister. I'm sure they'll drop everything. He wants MA Audits to request a statement from all those important and busy people because, as he says, this is serious criminal conduct by the prison officers. And here's a list of the criminal acts and civil wrongs that the prison officers have committed according to this individual. Plus he thinks the police are an organised criminal gang, and he gives legal advice telling MA Audits not to attend the voluntary interview the police have arranged. He estimates this claim by MA Audits with HNK solicitors is going to be worth somewhere between £10,000 to £25,000. This, I believe, is the effect of auditing and other biased anti-police and authority-baiting social media. It has brainwashed thousands of impressionable people, and it's difficult to know what the long-term effect of all this will be. In another part of the same post, he states, "Government buildings open to the public cannot have a policy of not allowing recordings, as this could be seen as indirect disability discrimination. Many people with disabilities require recordings as they may be partially sighted or they may have memory issues and will record the information so they can record it." I understand what he's getting at there, but he's misrepresenting the position. The policy isn't that you're not permitted to record, it's that you must have permission to record. Going back to the prison example, if a visitor has a proper reason for needing to record, they can ask. The law itself, section 40D, says that recording within a prison is only an offence when it is done without authorisation. Similar applies in a job centre. I would imagine that whether you're disabled or not, it won't make any difference really. If you ask the security guard for permission to scan a QR code or photograph a leaflet, they'll probably let you. If you just do it off your own back without even asking, probably nothing will happen as long as you're there for genuine reasons. There's nothing bossy about any of these rules. They exist for good reasons, and exceptions can be made in appropriate circumstances, such as the disabled, but also for people who are not disabled. It's not rocket science, it's just common sense. It's just about having a bit of respect and courtesy. A further point is that even if the prison service were applying section 40D of the Prison Act in a discriminatory manner, MA Audit's video does not establish this. MA Audits is not disabled. There are avenues to go down to raise complaints about stuff like this, and the prison service should respond because under the Equality Act 2010 they have a duty not to discriminate, and they are also bound under the 2010 Act by the public sector equality duty. Somebody else points out to MA Audits that he was breaking the law, and another auditor, DJE Media, has been prosecuted and convicted for the exact same offence. The auditor himself replies that that was an open prison, so won't apply to him, which simply makes no sense. It's then pointed out to him that there was a sign, and he replies in his signature semi-literate style with plenty of typos, which may be down to him using a phone. He says, "If I get done, I get done. It is what it is at the end of the day." His other replies display classic auditor reasoning, stating that a sign is policy and not the law, and the public can ignore it, and claiming that filming inside a prison can't be an offence because he wasn't arrested for it. I think it's clear that something needs to be done, otherwise MA Audits will just keep visiting prisons, and that's why it's so disappointing that the police don't pursue these cases, because all they're doing is giving the green light for auditors to carry on. That's how auditors interpret it. That's why there will be a call to action coming up on my channel about this, so keep an eye on the community page for that. It goes back to my point made in a previous video that knowing yourself is important in life. Don't try to pretend to be something you're not. Do what you're best at. Finding out what you're best at requires you to audit yourself, to know yourself, to recognise what you can do and what you can't do. All of us need to do that, really. People who encourage you down avenues that aren't suitable for you are not doing you any favours. They are not your friends. The fans and supporters of auditors are not their friends. They are not looking after their best interests. They're false friends. They're like the teacher at school who flattered you when it might have been kinder to give you a realistic assessment of your abilities to help you find out what you actually can do. It's always dangerous when somebody sells you a dream, whether that person is a Samuel Leeds or Greg Secker, or perhaps a more modest and well-meaning but misguided person. There's nothing wrong with dreaming, but the best dreams are the dreams that come true, and for a dream to come true, it has to be rooted in reality, based on knowledge and facts, based on learning and training and work. To me, auditing points to a dystopian future. The whole auditing scene is a celebration of ignorance and stupidity, combined with greed for money at the expense of the dignity of ordinary innocent working people who are just performing their duties and have never asked to face these idiots and don't deserve to be treated like this and can't answer back. We don't hear from the two prison officers who had to face this idiot. We don't hear their side of it. Instead, we hear only from the trivial, ignorant person you see there, and so my channel is necessary to redress the balance and show you the truth. In a previous video, when the police officer gave Auditing Britain a fist bump, I jokingly mentioned that maybe they were part of a Devizes massive. We should have a culturally dynamic society and be open to different cultures and so forth, but there is a time and a place for things. If you want to audit a prison, that's a serious thing to do. By all means bring some light relief into it, as I do, to keep your audience entertained. Nobody wants things to be dry and serious all the time. But auditing somebody is a serious exercise that involves questioning that person's competence and professionalism. Prison officers, in particular, have a very serious job to do. Whatever you and I may think about them, there's no room for messing around and being juvenile with a prison officer. You're not a kid, you are a grown adult. If someone were coming along to audit me, I would not appreciate groovy music and fist bumps and dude and cool and mate being thrown around. It's a professional situation. I'm not your mate. An audit is supposed to be a serious process. I expect a serious person to turn up. I want the so-called auditor to know his stuff, to know the law inside out. If it's going to be a vlogging audit of a prison, then I expect to see that the auditor knows prison rules and policies and procedures and has an understanding of the context and purpose of those laws and rules and policies and procedures. I don't find it appropriate for some ignoramus to turn up trying to cause trouble. That's not auditing, that's harassment. And you auditors rightly say that the taxpayer funds these places, so we the taxpayer should have the right to criticise auditors for their awful behaviour towards the bodies and organisations that we fund. I only call it auditing because that's what these so-called auditors want to call it. I go along with the label so that we can judge them by their own benchmark, and each and every one of them, without exception, has categorically failed to live up to their own claims. They are not auditing, they are committing harassment and other offences. It may be that some people find it entertaining. That's fine. I don't have a problem with people being entertained. I have a big sense of humour myself. But in that case, just admit that that is what it is, that it's just comedy or entertainment, and let's file it under that. Don't go around pretending that you're somehow defending my rights. You're not defending my rights, you're abusing my rights and everyone's rights, and you are contributing to the erosion of our rights, and none of it is funny.